Welcome to my spoiler review of Ozark Season 4, Part 1. So I just sat down and binged all 7 episodes in a row and it was a wild, crazy experience. I just had so much fun watching. It was so great to be back in the world of Ozark with the Byrde family and all the crazy money laundering shenanigans they get up to. It was a tense watch. And I was a little trepidatious at first because the first 2 seasons, I thought they were good. They were pretty good. But Season 3 was just exceptional. It was just an incredible, amazing season that I absolutely loved, but it kind of wrapped up a lot of the plots that I thought were really working, like the tragic downfall of Ben, and the performance from that actor was just heartbreaking and devastating, and it's just powerful and incredible and amazing. And so this season, you don't have him anymore. You don't have the great antagonist in Helen anymore. So how's this gonna, is it gonna cope? Is this gonna be a bit of a letdown? Is it gonna kind of feel like season 1 and 2, where I'm like, it's pretty good, it's kind of like Breaking Bad light. Instead of like the dad from Malcolm in the Middle cooking meth, it's the guy from Arrested Development, but he's laundering money, Whereas season 3, it's like, this is as good, if not better than Breaking Bad. This is so good. It is incredible. And season 4 is kind of in the middle. That's my general takeaway. I absolutely loved it. The writing, the acting, everything is so good. But I think that the way season 3 built up to this terrifyingly kind of inevitable and heartbreaking moment, and the last 2 episodes are just devastating. They're just so powerful and so heartbreaking. And I love the fact that Wendy kind of becomes the central character and we focused on her. And a lot of season 4 is focusing on her and kind of the aftermath of Ben. And I think a lot of what works in season 4, part 1, is like the aftermath of Ben and how everyone kind of deals with this and everyone kind of goes their separate ways and things start to be splintered off. But we get a lot more of Omar Navarro, and I'm not sure he's really kind of bringing his... he's a good actor. The writing's really good, mostly. But I feel like, and it's hard. I don't want to continually compare it to Breaking Bad, but it is very similar with it's a family dealing with a drug cartel, and they're getting a bit in over their heads. And some of the characters, Wendy, are breaking bad pretty hard. And so, if you compare Gus Fring or Tuco or pretty much any character in, Breaking Bad compared to this drug cartel, I feel like Navarro is kind of a bit lackluster and not as intimidating as I kind of hope. And sometimes they kind of act like he's more intimidating than I kind of feel like he is. So enter the new villain of the season, Harvey. Harvey is... a breath of fresh air, and it's a really fun performance, really terrifying at times. He's so cavalier. He's buying pastries and eating pastries, but also he's in their house being super intimidating, being like, have you dealt with this situation? Have you dealt with this? And it's really great kind of contrast to how Helen was kind of a bit more silent and, there was a malice underneath her where you always knew something bad could happen, that she might call someone and something bad would happen. Whereas this guy, he's kind of he's going to do it. He's going to shoot you in the head. And he speaks his mind. He's really kind of open and emotional and a bit aggressive. And so it was a really good counterbalance for what we had with Helen now to what we have with Harvey. And I think that he kind of provides a necessary kind of oomph to the cartel side of things that Navarro just never really was giving me. One of the biggest strengths of Ozark for its entire run, and that's including this season again, is the family dynamic. The whole family is just exceptional. The way they play off each other, the way they're all kind of incorporated into the family business of money laundering. And it's just so exciting to see. It kind of feels like the next evolutionary step from Breaking Bad, where in that, Skylar's kind of on the edge of it or not part of it or doesn't want to be a part of it. Whereas in this, Wendy Byrde is, if anything, more a part of it than Marty, and she steps in and she's keen and she's really politically hungry and she's using all these things and she's, I don't know, it's just so exciting to see her take such a forefront. I'd say she's more of a main character this season, whereas in season 1 to 3, up until those last few episodes, it's really Marty Byrde, even though, you could argue they're both co-main characters. It's really focused on him more, whereas this season, he kind of takes a step down a little bit, and Wendy takes forefront, and she is amazing. I am in love with her. She is so awesome. She is so, powerful and ferocious and terrifying, but also making, some really big, really odd, horrifying decisions, and she's so broken and damaged from what she's done to Ben, which is so heartbreaking, and the moment that she killed Ben, or, let Ben die in season 3, is kind of the moment the show could never come back from. And it's so exciting to see how much it shapes this whole season, and just how every single character is so kind of like consumed by however they feel about what she's done. And it's so exciting to see a show really kind of take a step into that final arc, because it's such an awful thing she did, and you just can't come back from it, and the show doesn't want to come back from it. And, you know, they're going to punish Wendy for this, and all the characters are punishing her for it in their own ways. We have Jonah go off on his own, we have Ruth go off on her own, and Charlotte kind of stays with the family. Charlotte gets kind of the least amount to do. We have all the main characters, but I'll get to that. Having the kids, Charlotte and Jonah, involved in the money laundering is so exciting. I mean, this will be the last time I reference Breaking Bad, I swear. Bloody Junior, the most useless character ever. Like, we never even got an amazing montage of him eating breakfast. So it's like, get out of here, Junior. Whereas Jonah, and Charlotte, to a lesser extent, she's still really good, but she really doesn't get that much, you know, juicy writing to kind of play with, and like much story to kind of sink her teeth into. Whereas Jonah this year gets so much to do. Straight out of the bat, he's like, Mum, you had Ben killed. How dare you? And he just calls her out for it. And for the rest of the season, there is this simmering tension between them. And it's so intense. There are so many great little scenes between them all. I love the idea of him wanting to prove himself and kind of fight against the family by working for Darlene as their money launderer. So he's like, you know, using all his skills, and he's getting all super nerdy on it and doing all his math, money laundering stuff and doing all that stuff, which is so much fun to see. It's so awesome to see him taking such a step, but it's so like terrifying and awful. In one of the first few episodes, he's just like, Ruth, you know Darlene is like batshit crazy. And then almost immediately, you know, right after that, he's like, actually, I will work for Darlene. And it's like, you just said she was crazy, dude. Like, don't work with the hillbillies. Oh, no. And the whole thing with Darlene, you can just feel it sinking. Like, she is just gone. She's been crazy from the get-go. But this whole season, like, there's a point where she's like, how dare these people not shoot that guy in the dick for you? Like, we got to do something about that guy. And she's talking about honor and, you know, family and, you know, sticking up for each other. You shot your husband. What are you talking about, Darlene? You're a psychopath. You've been a psychopath for forever. She's so old, so haggard, so wrinkly, she's like peak hillbilly. And I find her absolutely despising. I mean, I know I'm meant to, but by God, she's just so sickening and I hate her. I really hate the character. It was so frustrating to see Ruth kind of side with her this season, and then Jonah gets kind of brought into it, and they're all kind of just pushing back from Marty, and particularly Wendy, due to the whole Ben of it all. But still, it's just, oh, Darlene, you make me sick. Speaking of making me sick, Darlene and Wyatt, I remember them having a relationship, and I remember being like, son, grandma kind of age gap, it's a bit weird and gross. Maybe last time I had the same visceral reaction, but this time I found it almost like I couldn't look at the screen. Like, he's just so in love with her at this point. There are so many gross, disgusting moments where he's just like so in love with her. There's sometimes some really funny bits where he's like, I mean, it's her land. She can do whatever she wants. Also, she's my girlfriend. I'm like, I don't like the idea of anyone calling her their girlfriend. Just that word, her age, her wrinkles, her just generally being the worst human ever. It's just, it makes me sick inside. And then the fact that we get to a point where he's like, I'm bailing, I'm getting out of Ozark, which is obviously a curse to a character. You cannot be a character in a show called Ozark and being like, I'm getting out of Ozark, I'm out of this town. Mate, if you want to leave town and it's called Ozark, either you're dead or you're not getting out of town. Like, don't do it. And then he's immediately like, actually, I don't want to do it. I want to stay and marry Darlene. At that point, I was like, Wyatt. You've lost all sympathy from me. And I don't know, I guess I liked you at one point, but now you're this weird little, like, sex toy to Darlene, and it just, I feel like you could do better. I mean, maybe you can't, but I mean, you must be able to do better than Darlene. How'd you fall in love with her? She's so despicable and disgusting, and it's like, love is love. I'm not trying to shame anyone for love. You know, love is love. I'm not trying to shame anyone. But seriously, like, Darlene is despicable. She's intolerable. She's the worst. There are so many moments where she's just talking and someone's like, oh, and then she just shoots them. It's just like, oh, speaking of that, when Frank bloody comes into the room and he's all like, give me the money, how many times do I have to tell you, Darlene, give me the money? I'm like, mate, I mean, I know you haven't seen all the scenes we've seen. You're not watching the show Ozark. You're living in the show Ozark. But buddy, she like walks out of the room and like, she's gonna kill him. She's gonna grab a shotgun and shoot him. That's like her move, to like grab a shotgun and shoot someone shockingly. But at this point, I'm like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Or me again. Fool me 3 times, no, you're not gonna fool me 3 times, mate. And then she just shoots him. I'm like, oh, Frank Sr., buddy, you deserve to die. Like, what are you doing, mate? So we get a lot more of Frank Sr.'s son, Frank Jr., where he's just Mr. Dickless, and it's just, at first you see him kind of like limping around the cane and stuff, and I'm like, oh shit, so he's okay. And then he like sees Darlene in the scene, and he's just kind of like, hey, Darlene. And he's not like, you shot my dick off. Like, he's way too calm. This was like the biggest thing that stood out to me for the whole season. It was just, Frank was way too calm around Darlene, like, in all the scenes. Like, way later, at one point, you know, Ruth's like, you can bloody take out Darlene now. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna do it. She shot my dick off. But before that, there was multiple times where he was just, like, talking with her, like, and then he even addressed, like, you shot my dick off or whatever. But, like, dude, she shot your dick off. Like, I would be, I couldn't be in the same room with her, having civil conversation, being all chill. I'd be losing my mind. I'd be getting my cane and hitting her. I'd be like, you took my dick away. How dare you? I need that. I couldn't relate to him in this situation. I also found it really, really bizarre how, like, almost, it was like a half-baked, you know, mini arc, not really a full arc, you know, just kind of there-ish. But it was like this weird redemption-y kind of arc where he was kind of sympathetic because you're like, he lost his dick. But, like, you know, there was even a moment where he was with Ruth and he's like, I really shouldn't beaten the shit out of you. That was super not cool, dude. And she's like, oh, you know, let bygones be bygones. I shouldn't have thrown you off the boat or whatever. Okay, I guess he's chill now. And, like, I don't know. It was just like a bizarre kind of turn of pace. And then he got, like, a really sad scene where she's like, I wanted to be the one to tell you, your papa, he's dead. And he's like, oh, no, my dad. Oh. And it's like a really sad moment. And it's like, this guy was such a mean, nothing brute. And we're now getting this kind of mini little sympathetic arc. So I found that really fun. So this season, Jonah kind of goes out on his own. He's money laundering. He's turning against the family. And it's all because his mum killed his uncle, her brother. And the whole season, he's like, Charlotte, this is just like if you killed me. Would you ever kill me? And he's really, you know, it's really eating him inside, and all this stuff was just totally understandable. He's, you know, justified in his outrage and his horror at what his mum's done. But there's like a lot of little things that he does, you know, throughout this season where it's like, mate, Ben had like an excuse for not kind of comprehending and understanding the situation. And his like childlike naivety of like not grasping the situation makes sense for his character and where he is with his mental illness and all those things. Even though you're meant to be 14, Mr. at least 18, 20-year-old, 14-year-old, mate, you're completely aware of like the situation. You're completely aware of the gravity of the situation, of the, you know, the people that you work for and the people that you're, you know, and so he's like, I'm not working with you, father and mum. I won't. So I'll work with these crazy hillbillies who are murderers and psychos, and then I will betray my family, directly tying them to the murder of a sheriff to Darlene, just because one time she's like, bloody, tell me about the sheriff. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And the second time she's like, tell me about the sheriff or I'll be mad. And he's like, oh, they got rid of the body. Dude, you didn't even ask them about it. You just presumed. You didn't go, hey, what happened with the sheriff? And they would have explained, being like, oh, that psychopath Harvey shot him to death, and then he just rocked up with the body. We have to get rid of it. It's at our house now. Jonah, maybe think about the situation. I guess it's because he's a child or whatever. But, you know, there was just like little moments where like his betrayals to the family he was getting pretty close to becoming a Ben liability as well. So I think he's just getting a pass because he's 14. So I don't really think that's fair. Although Wendy tried to have him arrested and sent to jail, which was an extreme reaction to all of this, I have to admit. There's such an amazing dynamic between Wendy and Marty, and they really come out amazingly in these scenes where Wendy's just so like passionate and like outspoken and like really, you know, and when she gets to that point, she becomes like, not hysterical, but just like, you know, she just becomes so mad and she lets her emotions get the better of her. And I'm like, I can relate to that Wendy. I'm more of a Wendy than a Marty, I think. And she's just screaming at Jonah, being like, rah, rah, I'm trying to keep it. And he came straight back to you, Marty. Rah, rah. And Marty's just like, bloody hell, what are you doing? What are you doing, Wendy? Like, maybe just don't do that. Like, yeah. He's just got this so calm and calculated. And he's always like thinking, you know, like 5 steps ahead in his head very quietly. And he's very subdued. And it's just that perfect Jason Bateman kind of, like, it reminds me of him in Arrested Development when he's got all the Bluths, these crazy wild characters, and he's just the straight man just being like, this bloody situation, am I right? And it's just this amazing dynamic this couple has, and it kind of carries the whole show, I find. Like, the Byrde whole family, the dynamic is so good. I love Wendy and Marty. They have such a good dynamic. They're so different, and they, you know, they fit together so well. Like, there's so many like beautiful scenes where, like, you know, I really feel like they do love each other, even though so much has happened. It's so twisted and turned at this point, but they're still there for each other, which is really sweet and beautiful. Then we have Charlotte and Wendy kind of together, and there are moments where they're bonding over the business and things like that that are really, really nice. And I love that Charlotte just kind of, you know, she's like, her getting Ben killed is completely insane and awful, but this whole situation is crazy and awful, and I love that she just kind of sided with her mum, and she knows that she's there for her, and she knows that her mum is devastated and heartbroken, and it wasn't an easy decision. It almost killed her, but she did it for them so that they wouldn't die, so that he wouldn't kill the whole family, and it's just, you know, a rock and a hard place kind of thing. I just love that they kind of stayed together through this, and then Jonah kind of pushing away from that, I really liked. There was a couple of scenes early on where, and I hope that we kind of get back to this a bit as well, where Marty and Jonah have all this kind of bonding over their nerdy math, money laundering stuff, and they're all doing business, being like money laundering, and they're just saying all that jargon where I'm like, I presume this is all making sense. I have no idea what they're all saying, but you know, I'm an idiot, so I have no idea what they're saying, but all math nerdy stuff, and it's a lot of fun just seeing them bond over that. There's a great moment where he's like going out on his own, and the mum, Wendy's like, he's 14, and he's like, oh, my son's 14, and he's gonna go and launder money for someone else. Like, what a capable little man, like father, like son. And he's so, like, silently proud when he's like, don't you dare be proud. That was one of the highlights of the season. I just love that moment so much. But what's so great as well about that is, like, Marty's, like, very, very proud. But immediately when he realizes his son's going off to Darlene's side, he walks straight inside and he goes to Charlotte, don't you tell your brother anything about the business ever again, but back out being the proud dad. And so he's having both, and like, oh, that was a really, really great moment. There is this one fantastic scene that is like this symbolic kind of representation of the whole family dynamic at this one point, as when Jonah's very estranged. I mean, he's estranged for the whole season, but they're all having dinner and they're all eating Chinese takeout. And Wendy, Charlotte, and Marty, who, you know, all on one side of the situation, are all eating with chopsticks. And then Jonah is eating with a fork. And it just stood out to me immediately. And I'm like, symbolism. It's a representation of the family dynamic. I love it. I love it. Food, symbolism, yes! Cutlery to chopsticks, just... Honestly, that was like my favorite part of the season. I was just like, look what they've done. Was that even... That must have been on... just... Mwah. Mwah, 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 mwah. So season 3's arc really kind of culminated in Ben and his tragic downfall and the inevitable betrayal from his family, and just this heartbreak and horror. And it's so good to see that kind of like, you know, it's almost like a recovery season where for the whole season, everyone's recovering from the loss of Ben. This just huge moment. And Wendy's whole character throughout this season is so interesting and terrifying, like where she's doing all her political stuff and she's meeting, you know, from the left and the right, everyone from different aisles and all this stuff, and she's doing deals and doing money deals and all this cool political stuff. And so through this, she meets the Shaw Medical Company, and they're, you know, doing all, you know, they're saving lives through drug tests and all this kind of stuff, rehabilitation centers, and, you know, she's doing all this little stuff throughout that. And, you know, she's out in the press doing like video interviews and stuff where she starts to kind of use Ben's missing persons case, which really is her murder, and she's like using this to kind of get like a political advantage and like use the fact that it's like, and lying about him being like a drug user and all this stuff, which, I mean, I'm always on Wendy's side. I love her. She's awesome, and there's so many times where she's having like you know, fights with people and yelling and arguing, and maybe she's not in the right 100%, but I'm like, you tell Ruth that. And I'm just like, I love her so much. This moment, it got pretty hard to be like, I'm on Wendy's side. It's all good here. We're not the villains here. Because, yeah, and then like her, you know, and then when Jason Bateman's just like, That was not cool, Wendy. Why would you use Ben like that? That's uncool. And everyone, Ruth's like seeing it on the TV. She's like, what the hell? Like, what the hell? How dare she? Really despicable, really cold and heartless. And like, when he's like, why? Marty's just like, why would you do that, Wendy? And she's like, it's good PR. Sorry, what? I mean, I thought she might just like not respond or something, or come up with like a less cold and heartless and horrific thing to say, but just to be like, yeah, it's good PR. Yeah, I guess so. If you're a heartless monster from hell, like, come on, Wendy, I'm on your side. Don't lose me now. There's some truly heartbreaking and horrific moments with the whole Ben of it all, and Wendy, like, she's driving through town and she sees all the missing persons posters everywhere. Just Ben's face, and he's just smiling, he's happy, and it's absolutely devastating. It's really, really horrific. Like, the other bit that really stood out to me is just powerful and like awful, and like her trying to come to terms with what she's done is like, she's like digging up and putting all the rocks around and makes this kind of shrine thing. And we'll write down our feelings about it and burn them, and we'll leave the candle there. And Jonah's like, no, this is bullshit. I'm having none of this. This is despicable. You murdered him. You can't have a shrine like this. And he just walks away. And then Wendy's like freaks out. So it's just, it's so complicated, it's so intense. It's so hard to kind of wrap your brain around like this situation, because like in those last few episodes of season 3, he just wasn't getting it. He wasn't getting it. It's just, he was really pushing them to that point. And there's so many amazing like exchanges, especially between Wendy and Ruth about Ben. And there are so many great moments where, you know, Wendy's just like calls Ruth out, and she's like, you knew him for 2 months. He's had a million flings like you. He would have been over you within a month. Then Ruth's just like, yeah, if he had a month, if you hadn't killed him. It's so complicated, so intense. The moment Jonah gives Ruth the ashes, I'm just like, Jonah, stop being the worst son in the world. Like, I know you're angry, but Ruth knew him for 2 months and she got him out of the hospital. So she started this. As soon as he's out of the hospital, he crossed the line and he immediately went and did something irredeemable. And yes, Helen died, but only after. So like his kind of case at the start of the season, where it's like, if Helen's dead, then Ben never needed to die. Well, no, at that moment, it was coming to them or him. And it was, I mean, I'm sure this could be argued to death, which side you'd land on, if Ben actually deserved to die or needed to die. I mean, he didn't deserve to die. They could have found some way around. But I found it really compelling at the end of season 3, where Wendy is just to a point where she can't come back from that. She doesn't know what to do, and she thinks this is the only way to save her kids and her family. So it's 1 or 5 of them is kind of her like thinking. And it's tragic and, you know, horrific, but I don't know. I'm kind of like more willing to side with her on this. But then things keep happening this season, which make me really question like her judgment of it all, especially using Ben and pretending that he's got like a drug problem and stuff. Feels really cold and really terrifying. Like she's kind of cut off her heart at this point and being like, I'm not thinking about it. There's also some really intense stuff where she goes to find like, you know, because now it's a missing persons case. People like being like, oh, I think we found the body. And she goes and we see her dad, played by the F.B.I. main guy from The Americans. Great to see him. As soon as he started talking, I'm like, it's the guy from the other thing. I like his voice. He was good in that thing. Yeah, I liked him. I loved how much he hated his daughter and how much she hated him. It was really kind of awful and terrifying, but it was a really interesting dynamic. And I love how she's like, oh God, no, just thinking of someone who went to speak to him. Perfect time to start talking about the weirdest kind of inclusion to this season, the PI guy. So this season we get, a couple of new introductions, Harvey being like the best one, the good one. And then the PI investigator guy who just keeps rocking up and being like, I just need a signature. I just need a signature. He felt like he was from like a sitcom where he would just like pop his head over the fence and be like, all I want is a signature. Why won't everyone give me a signature? Dude, back off. Get out of here. Like, get another job. How much are they paying you? He's like, I'll drive anywhere. I'll drive anywhere in the state. I'll drive anywhere out of state. I'll go overseas. I'll catch a plane. I just need to figure out this case and get that signature. What are you talking about, dude? Just get another case or something. And then later they're like, he used to be a hardboiled detective and then some coke scandal thing happened and blah, blah, blah. He's driven. He's a workaholic. Sure. But mate, this guy is relentless in just a bizarre way where it's like, dude just needs a signature. How much is he getting paid for that? Like, find another job. Like, what was going on? I guess his curiosity's peaked. His like detective, spidey detective sense is going off for us all. Like, something's up here. But he just felt weird. Like the whole season, he's just like, I just want a signature. And you're like, dude. Although the best part about it was that each time he rocks up, Marty's just like, I hate this guy. I hate this guy. I'm like, so do I, Marty. Like, get this guy out of here. So I don't know. He was a weird introduction. He felt like he was just there to kind of poke and prod at the family to kind of force other things to happen around Helen. And it just felt a bit, I don't know, not unnecessary, but one of the weaker elements where I'm like, I don't know if there's a better way to do this or make him feel more integral, make him an actual detective maybe. I don't know. It just felt a bit kind of like, okay, sure. I'm sure that in part 2, he's going to play a bigger role. Like at the end, he's still like, a loose thread dangling. So I'm sure he's going to get more involved. He's in the motel and he's looking at them at the end as they bail and he's like, I'm doing some detective work at the moment. And I'm like, okay, let that simmer for a bit. And I'm sure it'll be slightly whelming, at the end. I don't know. He was just like, eh. So we get a little bit of fun with Sam, the gambling guy that they were like, last season, they're all like, you're going to launder money and we're going to wash our cash or, I don't know, all that money. I understood what was happening, but I don't know the terminology or whatever. But he's like gambling his money away and they're filtering it around and making it clean or doing whatever. I mean, whatever. But, they're using him and they're paying him back. And he's like, I'm not a gambler. I don't have an addiction. And then straight away this season starts. And he's just like a complete addict. He's gambling. He's like the horse races. They're like, come on. And I just found that really funny and kind of silly. He's just like this little side character. And he's easy to kind of push around and move around. And he starts working at the sleazy motel kind of thing that Ruth buys. And I don't know. I just find him like a fun little addition to the whole show. He's so kind of naive and silly and just, I don't know, like a pawn for them all to push around everywhere. And it was just fun to see him back in kind of a moderately minor role, which was, just a bit of fun. And I enjoyed him. So one of the main antagonists for the entire series so far has been Darlene, the withered, old, wicked, hillbilly, just absolute, just disgusting human being that I absolutely loathe. I hate her. She's so awful. She's so despicable. She's always just grabbing her shotgun and murdering people so callously. She's so like lazy about it as well. Like she shoots someone and then she's like, you, my little pawn, my little children, you go and bury him in the forest. I'm going to bed. Screw you, Darlene, you disgusting old hag. Like, I don't like you. And I don't like your laziness. Like, at one point, she's just sitting in the car, and Wyatt's just digging up a grave for what would have been at least 1 billion hours. The grave was so big, it was so huge, that would take forever. Dude's not that big either. Like, he would have, jeez. Man would have had to do that for just so many hours. And it's just, I know she's got the baby and stuff. You put the baby down for a second. Leave the baby inside in the cot. I don't, maybe not do that. But, like, just help him. I know she's old and stuff, but it's like, help him dig. Like, you shot that guy. Help him dig. I hate how she's like, I'm so above it all. Oh, I'll keep doing my heroin business. And yeah, I don't know. There's something just so despicable about it. And I guess that's, a testament to how amazing the actress is. And she's performing so well, making me hate her so much. It reminds me of like a Joffrey or Dolores Umbridge, I can't stand her. I just want her to die. And so for so much of this season, I'm just like, I just really want her to die. Like, I just want it to happen so badly. And then she comes to the house and she's all like yelling, and then Wendy's yelling and they're all yelling at each other. And then she starts like having a heart attack. And I'm like, oh my God, she's going to have a heart attack. And then Wendy's going to like be like, do I save her? Do I not? Do I save her? And then there was this moment and I'm like, oh my God. Last time I referenced Breaking Bad, I swear. But it was exactly the same as the moment with Walter White and he's looking down on Jessica Jones and he's like, chooses to let her OD with Jesse passing out there and he's like, watches her and he could save her, but he chooses not to because it's more convenient for him. And then Wendy has the exact same moment and she's like, got the phone. And then she just sits down and like looks and I started losing my mind. I was like screaming at my TV. I was just like, oh my God. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God. Wendy has gone full Breaking Bad. She's gone to, like, this is like next level psycho crazy shit. Like, this is way further than anything she's done before. This is like heartless and horrific. Just to watch a woman die of a heart attack and then it like fades to black and I'm like, oh my God, that's how you end an episode? That is so bold and crazy. And I thought Wendy had kind of got to the point where she couldn't return. And now this is like an extra point to like watch someone die like this. And then you hear like a 911, what's your emergency or whatever. And it's like, okay, I'm glad I didn't have to wait. I mean, I kind of wish this had come out week to week so like we really sit on it and stew on it. But, you know, this one moment, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't have to sit and stew and be like, wait, did that mean that she did call? Or how am I emotionally meant to feel? Because immediately, Darlene's like in the hospital and she's like, I survived. Just take that, Jax. I'm still in it. I'm like, God damn it. Oh, you can't commit. What are you doing, Ozark? Like, you had such a moment to kind of kill the character in this horrific way and it was going to work so well. And then you kind of just was like, no, we're gonna almost give you that, but we're not gonna go fully, we're not gonna push her to that kind of level yet. And I found that a little disappointing and annoying. And I guess it's not necessarily a full-on fake out, because, she still kind of paused on the moment, but and there's still some really great sequences. Like, I really enjoyed a lot of what came next, like, especially when she just comes into the hospital and she's just like, oh, you're such a fragile heart. And she's like, I'm a bull! And like trying to tense all her wrinkly muscles that she doesn't have. And Wendy's just like, you just had a heart attack. You're pretty fragile. All I did was say that you sold the drugs to these guys and then we bought the drugs back and and I kind of semi-screwed you over and I got the upper hand and all I did is say words at you and you had a heart attack. You're pretty fragile. Then all the doctors come in and she's like, please take care of dear Darlene. She's so fragile at the moment. I loved that scene. That was a lot of fun. But I still kind of feel like the other scene really implied you were going to kill her in this just absolutely horrific way, which I just kind of, I mean, it sounds so evil and horrible to say I wanted it to go down like that, but this show is pretty intense and disturbing. And season 3 proved that they are going to, put that foot into making the characters not anti-heroes and just full-on villains. And I thought this was like the next step for Wendy to kind of partake in a murder, whereas, she kind of just, essentially okayed the hit on her brother, which is definitely still worse, and the show's never going to reach that point again in terms of like horror and heartbreak and actual emotional like gut punch. But killing Darlene like that I think would have been really, really exciting. But let's not titty-tally about it anymore. Darlene does get her comeuppance, and it's right at the end of this season. So now the last 2 seasons have both ended with completely horrific, shocking, just bang, 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 bang. But last season's Helen one was so much more shocking. Just to end the season on that, I really didn't see it coming, and there was so much building up to it. And then realizing he's made the choice, them, not her, in just a gunshot. When the gun bit, like the guy's not even in the frame. Like often when you frame something, like in a show, I'm like, oh, someone's standing there. That means I feel like, and then the car comes and hits them because of the framing, or there's just ways where you frame stuff sometimes where I'm like, it's a bit too signposted and a bit annoying. That one was just so breathtaking, where just the gun just appears suddenly and it's like bang, and it's just like ah. And this one was a little more obvious because he it's very close to the end of the 7th episode, the finale of the part 1. So something's going to happen, something kind of big, emotional kind of shock. I mean, that's what I expected. I'm not, would have been surprised if nothing like that had happened. And then when they all come in and bloody Harvey's like, I told you at the start of the season, I told you in episode 2, I told you in episode 3, stop selling heroin. And she's like, I don't give a damn. Bang, 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 bang. Oh my God, I was so excited that she died. I mean, it's disappointing because she's a great antagonist for the show. And, she really worked to kind of, build up that blood pressure for me. And there were so many great scenes and sequences with her. But I really just didn't like her. She's so slimy and just like, I was pretty happy she died. But then Wyatt. And he unfortunately made his bed. Like, he was like, I'm getting out of Dodge. I'm not going to be, because when he sees her shoot that second person, he freaks out. He's like, she killed that, like, the guy from Kansas City. Oh no, Frank Sr., he's dead. And he, like, breaks down. He's like, I'm bailing. And then she has one little sob story about the people taking the baby away. And it's like, okay, if you're, Ruth says it, like, if you're afraid the baby's going to go, take the baby. But he's not. He's so scared and afraid of, like, leaving Ozark. He's trapped in this, like, really bizarre, toxic, horrific, weird love relationship that it can't be love. It's just so twisted and demented. And maybe it's just my bias for hating Darlene. But honestly, for me, it was just one too many moments of Wyatt being like, nah, I'm with Darlene on this one. I'm staying here. I love her. We're a family. Well, if you're a family, then you deserve to die too. I'm sorry. That might be controversial to say, but mate, you sleep with Darlene that many times, you fall in love with her, and you are by her side at this point, you're gonna die too. Like, I'm sorry. And he just says those, like, I'm sorry, whoever you are. Bang, 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 bang. And it's horrific, and I kind of wish I felt a little differently, because then the final part of this season is Ruth just losing her mind when she sees it, and she's just screaming like, and the season ends with her just being like, and just losing her mind. And all I kept thinking was, I don't know, Wyatt kind of has that coming. Like, how dare he be in love with Darlene? She's so despicable. I do not see what he sees in her. I do not understand their relationship. She's a monster, and he had a chance to get out. He had a chance to leave, and he chose not to. So someone was going to do this to them eventually. So I'm sorry, Wyatt, but I don't know. I can't feel for you too badly. I feel for Ruth, but also the whole season, Ruth is like really antagonistic towards the Byrdes. And, you know, if you're against the Byrdes, you're against me. And so I'm against you, Ruth. And I found her pretty unlikable for a lot of this season, even though she's pretty justified. But also, you knew Ben for 2 months. And Wendy knew Ben for her whole life. So, I don't know. I feel like you're, you know, being a bit harsh. Although there's some spectacular, you know, versus against Ruth and Wendy, and just showdowns and scream matches offs and all that kind of stuff, which is a lot of fun. And there's some really great stuff, which is like, Darlene, we got to do it like this. We got to run our business like this. And she's got all these like quick, you know, good ways to make money and like, you know, adapt and change. And Darlene's always just like, no, I'm old and I won't have this. I won't have the young people control it, even though I brought you in to help, but I'll say no at every turn because Darlene's the worst. And every time something happened with Ruth, I'm like, oh, I feel like I should have more sympathy. But you decided to work with Darlene, a psychopath who shoots people's dicks off and is just the worst person ever. So, I don't know. I can't really feel that bad for you either, Ruth. You made your bed with Darlene, so... Alright, so I've barely talked about it, but it's pretty much the overarching plot of the entire season. Navarro. Omar Navarro wants to go legit. He wants to, essentially, instead of cleaning money this season, he wants them to clean him. And he wants to, like, you know, make a deal with the FBI. The first moment that he actually says this privately to the Byrdes, and Wendy just has this look of like, you can't be serious. This isn't going to work. Like, what are you thinking, mate? Like, what are you thinking? And this one little glimpse in her eyes when she realizes this is the man she killed her brother, Ben, over. Her brother. She killed her brother for this man. This insane cartel guy who wants to now get out like it's all good. There's a lot of stuff with Maya, the FBI agent, and, like, them having meetings and them slowly dealing with all that stuff. And it's pretty good. But I would say this is kind of some of the weaker stuff. I just don't really think Navarro is bringing it. And I just don't think Navarro is as menacing and intimidating as I kind of feel like they want him to be. Harvey really kind of like steps it up and helps that not be like a weak link of the entire series. But the way that he kind of is presented in this, it's just a little odd. Like there are just moments where I'm just kind of like, okay, so he just wants to be clean and stuff. It just feels a bit like we haven't got to know him so well, and suddenly this is what he wants to do this season. It feels a bit like out of the blue, and then towards the end, he gets arrested, and he's just in prison, and they switch the deal over, and he's like, oh, bloody, I could get you at any point. And I'm like, I don't know, like, I don't feel that the way I feel like I should feel that. Like there was so much tension before he was properly introduced as a main character. And I felt like I was more scared of him then. And in season 3, when he was kind of used less and like more as like a side character, like this, like, you know, this man in the shadows that I should be afraid of. Whereas now it's like a full-fledged character and he just wants to be legit. It feels a bit like, but you can't have that. Like, what are you talking about, mate? So I don't know. That whole plot didn't really work for me that much. An aspect of that I did like was Maya, the FBI agent. She's just had her kid and she moves in with the Byrdes at one point. And I don't know. I really like her and Marty's kind of relationship. It's been really interesting how it's kind of like changed over the last season to how it is now. And it's a really interesting dynamic. And then like all the top FBI agents are all like, actually, we don't want to stop the cartel. We want to use them and stop all cartels. And we're just going to keep doing this forever. And we don't really want to, you know, stop it. We want to use them and still make some, you know, cheeky cash on the side. And she's just like, what do you mean? Why didn't you tell me? And they're like, because you're self-righteous and a piece of shit and we don't like you. And she's like, okay. Well, I'm going to just go and arrest him and ruin all of this. And I really liked that. It felt like a really nice end to her arc. I really, really like her as a character. She's a lot of fun and, like, I understand her. Like, every time she's in a situation, I kind of feel like I know where she's at. And she kind of grounds the whole Navarro storyline and makes it and elevates it to something more than what I think it kind of is, which is just a little bit lackluster. But I think I think that's just because season 3, with the whole Ben of it all, was just so good. And there was such a great emotional connection to that storyline with Wendy and Ben and all of that stuff. And Helen was just such a scary and different antagonist in just like this cold, heartless lawyer. And she was just so tall and like menacing and just, I don't know. There was a real thing they had with season 3 where everything was just working. And this season, just a little bit less. I still think it's an amazing season. I had so much fun watching it. I didn't have any trouble just binging all 7 episodes in a row. I barely stopped just going to grab coffees because it's very late. So I had to keep my eyes open. But not because of the show being bad at all, just because it's like 3:30 in the morning here. Another aspect of this season, which I was probably in like the last seasons as well, but it really just stood out to me this time, and I swear this is the last time I referenced Breaking Bad, but I like that since Breaking Bad, every show that's like got a Mexican drug cartel, they're like, well, we've got to make sure our color correction in Mexico is just as yellow as possible. Just crank that yellow saturation as high as possible, or whatever they do, they just click a button and just make it yellow. I guess it's just called Breaking Bad Mexico look or whatever. They just click a button and it's like, bam, yellow. But it actually works really nicely to the contrast of the other button where it's like, make it look like Ozark, in brackets, very, very blue, and click that color correction button and makes everything very blue. And I like that. I like having like things where I can like, you see the image and immediately I know where I am. I really, really like that. So, I mean, just on film making and just the camera and everything, that was badly worded. It's very late. Shut up. I love how the show looks. I love how it feels. There's such a great use of camera and it's never like too flashy and dramatic or anything. So the Byrdes house has this really interesting floor plan and the way they use it and have characters in different areas and walking through and like the way they kind of create tension through this house and the way everyone's just walking around the house, I found really, really exciting. Like there's just some really great uses. It's like they've had the house there for 4 years or whatever and now they've finally gone, let's just really utilize this. Let's make everything look beautiful and amazing. The show never does anything where I'm just like, wow, look at that one sequence. But just overall, it's all just beautiful to look at. I just absolutely love it. I think when the show first started, I was like, it's pretty blue. I don't know why they made Ozarks look so blue. But now it's like part of the show. It feels like integral to how the show feels and kind of, I was going to say tastes, but I just... Yeah, but it's almost like that. You feel like you can taste the Ozarks. Like it's got this really like great feel to it. So another new character this season is Claire from the Shaw Medical Company, whatever they're called. And she's really good. She doesn't get that much to do. Like, I mean, she does. She's in quite a lot of it. But, it's not like the most interesting character, but I found it really compelling where her family was like being all corrupt and stuff. And she's like, I'm not going to be corrupt. And then the first time they're like, we'll save you like $300 million if you just use illegal heroin that we'll give you for like, $300 million less. And she's like, and they're like, we'll stop talking whenever you want us to stop talking. And she's like, keep talking. And like immediately just cracks. And she's like, okay, I'll be corrupt too. Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. A-okay. And there's a lot of really fun kind of like, just shenanigans with the drug dealing and like we sold it to this guy, sold it to this, and all the, machinations of all the drug dealing stuff with Darlene and Ruth and how it all kind of, I don't know, I like how everyone's separate and stuff. And then by the end of the season, Marty and Ruth are like, I need your heroin. Let's team up. We punch for a bit and now we're mates again. And then at the end of the season, she's got the gun. I'm like, we're not mates anymore, Marty. You're gonna bloody kill me. And it's just, I don't know. I'm just loving it. At this point, I feel like the show is so focused on like, the 5 or 6 characters that we have. And it's just really starting to focus in the way that a part 1 of a final season should feel. Like, I don't want so many characters where I'm like, oh, okay, we're losing track of the main characters, bring it back down. Like, we get enough characters introduced to kind of balance the season and not make it just feel like, it's the end. So I think in part 2, we won't have many characters introduced at all, and it's going to feel even more focused. But for a part 1 of a final season, spectacular, amazing. Part of me feels there's a little bit of like it's a little bit of an odd finale where Navarro's just like, he's away, and now it's just Harvey, whatever his name is. And like, I don't know, one part of me, I'm like, oh, we spent so long with Navarro, and now he's just locked up, and is that it now? But on the other hand, he was kind of the weak element. So maybe that's how you should do it. Just get rid of him. And in the final season, we're going to have Harvey as like our big bad. But But I also think this series is probably going to kind of come in where like the Byrdes end up being their own worst enemies and their greatest foe was themselves. I mean, I sound like I don't like that, but I'm super excited for that. I just love this show. I love Wendy Byrde. I feel like I haven't said much about Marty, but Jason Bateman absolutely kills it. I love his performance. It's so kind of like, I don't know, it's just so like, it's almost like he's, I don't know, not like underacting, but he's got this just like quietness to him that whenever he kind of speaks up or like yells or anything, it really stands out. But I feel like his character, I totally understand. And like, I feel like he's just real. I don't know. He's got like this, and it just balances perfectly with Wendy. I don't know. I find it hard to kind of encapsulate exactly what it is about him. And I don't think it's just that I love Jason Bateman and, you know, I love him as Michael from Arrested Development since I was like, you know, 12 or whatever. I think it really is like this character that I see now as Marty Byrde. And I just find it really fascinating how it really started with him kind of being the guy that brought all the family into this. And now, you know, especially with Jonah and Wendy, they're kind of almost in there, like they're almost in it deeper than he is. And that's really, really exciting. I think one aspect of the part 2 that I think they should kind of hopefully improve on is giving Charlotte like a little bit more to kind of work with, because she's really great and I really like her. I just don't think she's getting enough. But apart from that, an amazing time. I absolutely loved watching it. It's so much fun. I mean, I wish the part 2 was going to come out next week. I cannot wait. I'll probably end up watching this again pretty soon because it's really, really great. And I mean, saying that it's not as good as season 3 isn't like a disservice to the season at all. Season 3 is honestly one of my favorite just single seasons of a show ever. Like, I thought it was so much better than season 1 and 2. Like, it just was like, blew it out of the park. And then most of the great elements, particularly the Ben of it all, you know, died. So you can't have him. And this show really, like, you know, used that and utilized it in the best way. And I think that was some of the most interesting stuff in season 4, part 1. Oh, and how could I forget? How could I forget this? The opening moment of this season. They're all driving in the car. They're like, oh, we're a happy family. And then Wendy's like, something, F.B.I. And I'm like, oh my God. And then, you know, her and Jonah, there's a lot of tension going on there. But like, I don't know, it definitely feels like, you know, like we're watching a flash forward. Like you gauge that pretty quickly with all the discussion. And they're all like, we're going back to Chicago or whatever. F.B.I. All this stuff. And I'm like, this is a lot of, you know, ticking time bombs to like, you've set off that happening in the future. And we're like, tick, 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 from where we are now. And then the car just flips and turns in the most, I screamed. It was such a crazy way to start. Like, it was like they were trying to compete with Casino Royale's, like the many flips they could do. And the car's just smashed up to hell with broken wreckage everywhere. And it's just like, so you've set off all these ticking time bombs of like, okay, they're with the FBI or something. I didn't go back to double check exactly what they said. And like this happens and that happens and they're all still safe, but they're all leaving together and they're all leaving Ozark or something. But then like an extra time bomb of just, and then they've all crashed. Like, is one of them going to die like that? I'm sure none of them are going to die like that. That would almost feel a bit weird unless it turns out like cut to the next season and Harvey is driving the truck and he's like, Rah! Or the guy who's the main character from S.H.I.E.L.D. He's like, it's the same truck driver from Sons of Anarchy. And he's like driving the truck. He's like, Rah! I'm in every season finale now. Rah! That would... Oh God, that would actually be terrible. But yeah, it's just such a bold, crazy move because you set off this, you know, this moment where you're like, okay. We're building up to this moment all season. And throughout the whole finale, I'm like, when are they getting in that car? When are they? And I was like, do I go back and see what clothes they were wearing so I know exactly when like we're going to get in the car? Like when they're all wearing the same clothes or whatever. And I'm like, no. Don't cheat yourself, Jack. Just enjoy the moment. Wait for them to get in the car. And then I'm like, but are they going to get in the car and we're going to see the scene play out and we're not going to see anything beyond that? Because that kind of feels cheap and annoying. Like, don't put it there. I kind of thought it would be the end of the second last episode and then we get a full episode post car crash. But then Ozark's like, actually, screw you, Jax. We're not going to put it in this part 1. It's going to be in part 2. I'm sorry, what? Writers of Ozark? How dare you? How dare you? That's the balls on you to put that scene at the start of this part and to not pay it off. I swear this is the last time I reference Breaking Bad, but it's the same thing as they did in Breaking Bad, where he opens a trunk and there's a gun and they're like, can't you wait for the finale of part 2 in like a year's time? I'm like, God damn it, Breaking Bad. God damn it. I can't wait. I actually found that gun thing just for a different video. That's enough Breaking Bad. But so, they've got this car thing that's going to happen in part 2. I wonder when it's going to happen. Part of me... No, I don't want this to happen, but part of me would just love it so much if that was the final moment of the show. Like, we get the 7 episodes or whatever it is of part 2, everything's happening, and they're driving away, and you're like, okay, we're going to get the car crash and something beyond that. And then the car crash happens, and then we just get close-ups in the car. They're all dead. Cut to black. And that's just it. Like, they've already shown us the end of the show. It would be terrible, but I would just love the balls on the rise to be like, let's just show them that all the characters die in a tragic accidental car crash. Because sometimes that happens. Cars are very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. And so let's just do that. Because shocking twist ending. And we want to rival the worst endings of all time. Not looking at anyone in particular. I'm talking about you, Dexter Newblood, you son of a bitch. But yeah, loved the season. Had so much fun. This was probably a bit more rambly than I originally meant it to be. I was taking notes for a little bit, but then I'm like, I've got too many notes. There's too much going on in 7 hours. Tried to condense it all and weave it into something coherent. If you've somehow got this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and all the YouTubey things, and comment below. I would love to know what everyone else thinks of Ozark Season 4 Part 1. Were we all like, yay, big yays, or were we all like, no, big nays, or a little, mix of both? I'd love to hear everyone's favorite moments, least favorite moments, and I'd also love to know what everyone wants for the final season Part 2. Like, how do you want this show to end? Does anyone have any, like, really great fan theories, fan ideas of, like, how they want the series to end? Do they get away? Do they die? Do the prison? So many options, so many things. Are you all really happy Darlene's dead? Did we all kind of want Wendy to watch her die of a heart attack? Literally just saying that out loud makes me feel like I'm the worst man who ever lived. But then I've just got to remember every scene that Darlene's in the series. And then I'm like, actually, no, she deserves that. She totally deserves that.